So good evening, everyone, and thank you for coming. My name is Sean Corsandi, and since 2015, I've been the Advocacy Director of Landmark West, and more recently, and now the Interim Executive Director. On behalf of Landmark West and our board and our co-sponsors for tonight's event, the Historic Districts Council, the League of Preservation Voters, and our host, Fordham University, I'm excited to welcome you to our West Side City Council candidates forum, the balance between land use and quality of life. Tonight's turnout is a testament not only to the public will and importance of participation in the democratic process, but also the impact that planning, zoning, preservation, and land use have on our lives and the future of not just our community, but the entire city. How we balance the needs of our population without losing our very identity, light, air, and open space. Literally, how locally we define our own New York values. Addressing preservation and land use concerns which impact quality of life form the core of Landmark West's mission, and we are validated by your vigilant presence to reinforce our mission. The ongoing influx of foreign investment dollars in New York, coupled with the weak Department of Buildings and complicit executive branch, are no match for the resource-filled development sector. These are problems we can't fight alone. This is also why we are so grateful that all of our District 6 candidates have accepted our invitation to join our forum tonight so that these essential topics can be acknowledged and become a key part of the conversation. Our forum this evening is the only place where you will hear from all 5 candidates in this race, and it echoes some of our main values of inclusivity and openness, and we can't do that without you. To this end, we ask that we all maintain a civilized tone. We have a beautiful space and offered a platform to each speaker, and they have redirected much energy towards preparation for this evening. I will be keeping time, and we have a brisk schedule. We ask that you hold your applause until the very end and refrain from expressing any audible disagreements. If you must, may I remind you that Twitter exists. The evening is organized in 3 parts: formalities, flexibility, and free form. We will begin with introduction and comments by all candidates, followed by a moderated discussion, and then you chime in. Please find Anna, Chris, or Adia in the audience. If you have a question on your card, raise your hand. They will come collect it throughout the evening and give them to me, and after 7 o'clock we will begin that portion of the program. We will get to as many of your comments as possible and hopefully address even more on our newly launched candidates webpage. There's a link to this in your program. It's on the top of the second page, right above Big Bill. That's the link, www.landmarkwest.org/election 2017. We're going to keep this posted, and we're also going to have an audio recording of tonight posted there as soon as it's presented. Without further delay, I want to introduce tonight's moderator to you. Leslie Messiah Arthur is the Associate Vice President for Government Relations and Urban Affairs at Fordham University. Prior to Fordham, she worked at the New York State Assembly Ways and Means Committee as a legislative budget analyst specializing in housing, judiciary, and higher education issues. Leslie received her bachelor's degree from SUNY Albany and her master's degree of arts degree from Fordham University. She also holds professional certificates from Yale University and the University of Michigan. Leslie believes that a meaningful change is possible, and the future of America is in the hands of those who question the state of the world around them and decide to be active in government and civic affairs. Leslie?
Can everyone hear me back there? Yes. Wonderful. First and foremost, on behalf of the President of Fordham University, Joseph McShane, the administration, the Board of Trustees, and our students, we welcome all of you to this important debate. I think it is with note that we are very proud to be considered the host of this debate and in this space. What we find is that our democracy is not always a very organized one. It's messy. It requires conversation, it requires discussion, and oftentimes the thrashing of issues, and seeing where we end up at the end of this debate. That said, the university setting couldn't be a better place for that. We find that ideas and hegemonic orders can only be changed once debate and conversation occurs. You don't have to agree with each other, but we can agree that the democratic process is nothing without said debate. So, as we begin, we're going to get some housekeeping rules out of the way. Number one, I ask that we turn down your cell phones, so that way we are not, granted this is not one of the big budget movies, but we are being recorded. That's one. Number two, the men and ladies' rooms are outside on your immediate left. So if you need to excuse yourself, please have access to all of our facilities, and more importantly, welcome. So let us get started. What we're going to do is this. Each candidate will have 3 minutes to introduce themselves, explain their records, and why they are running. After that, we'll be doing a round-robin conversation, meaning that we will start with each candidate with a question. They will have approximately 2 minutes to answer that question, and then each candidate after that can respond in a minute's time. Once that happens, it's our hope that we get through all the questions that we have here tonight. And as you can see, we've asked for cards in the hopes that we can not only generate conversation, but it's the most democratic way of making sure that all issues are addressed tonight. So that said, let me introduce our candidates for the evening. First, we start with Mr. Mel Wymore. Secondly, Dr. Carrie Goodman. Our current district representative and city councilwoman, Ms. Helen Rosenthal. Mr. David Owens. And Mr. William Raudenbush. I'm sure you know in terms of his campaign flyers, he's known as Big Bill Raudenbush. I think that's a bit redundant because I think we're the biggest guy here in the room. So we're going to stick with William for tonight if you don't mind.
That's fine.
All right. So let's get started. Mr. Wymore, please explain your position.
If you don't mind, I'd like to stand here. Good evening, everyone. Before I begin, I'd like to thank our esteemed moderator, Fordham University, and most particularly Landmark West. As a former board member of Landmark West, I know how hard they work to make sure that Upper West Side is the livable, beautiful, culturally relevant, inclusive community that it has always been. And I'm very proud to be here tonight in support of their values and on behalf of my own candidacy for City Council. I'm running for New York City Council because I love the Upper West Side. I've lived here for almost 30 years. I've raised 2 children here, and I've spent 22 years as a member of Community Board 7, twice elected as its chair. I'm an engineer by training, a systems engineer, and I'm also a former small business owner and had to close my business because of high rents. In 2013, I ran for City Council and I won the endorsement of the New York Times. I won that endorsement for the tangible results that I've produced for our community in the last 25, 30 years. I negotiated as chair of Community Board 7, 600 units of permanent affordable housing, standing up to one of the biggest developers in the city, $20 million for our parks, and the first new public school in 30 years ever to be built on the Upper West Side. I wasn't planning to run in 2017. That was not my intention. But concerns in this community continue to grow. Our schools continue to struggle with overcrowding, and our students struggle to get attention in their classrooms. Our storefronts are going empty on every street in our community, and our seniors struggle to be able to afford the high rent that they have to live with as they continue to soar in our neighborhood. This is all due to the undue influence of the real estate industry on our community. Our laws are skewed to advantage the real estate industry against the interests of our local community. We need to address land use reform, and that's precisely why I'm here, why I'm running tonight. Our community depends on the way our built environment proceeds. that we continue to have livable streets, that our buildings are at a human scale, and that we continue to have inclusive facilities throughout Bedford West Side. In tonight's debate, I want you to consider two things. Who has a history and a record of producing results for our community, real tangible results that affect Upper West Siders? And the second thing is, who has the plan to continue to build the Upper West Side in a reasonable, responsible way, and that includes every person in our community as the highest quality of life possible? I look for your debate tonight. I appreciate the opportunity to debate tonight, and I thank you for your listening. Thank you.
We have Dr. Carrie Goodman.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and thank you to Landmarks West, Historic Districts Council, and League of Preservation Voters for inviting us here. Leslie, thank you so much for taking the responsibilities of moderating this conversation. So, like Mel, I'm a lifelong, I was born in New York City. I've lived on the Upper West Side my entire adult life. I've raised our kids here. They went to PS9, PS84, the computer school. I don't know how many of you have seen this, but recently the Citizens Budget Commission conducted a study all across New York and asked people, how do you like your neighborhood? You guys see that in the New York Times? No. Well, the most popular neighborhood in the whole city, guess where it is? Right here, the Upper West Side. People love the Upper West Side. They love the cultural activities. They love the diversity. They love the opportunities to be involved at Lincoln Center and to be experiencing great things in the parks. But there are three stains that are plaguing our community, and that's why I'm running for City Council. The first, as I'm sure you're all aware, is the stain brought on by the Museum of Natural History's toxic expansion plan into our public park. It's a private institution which the City Council has used public dollars to fund to take away public parkland. I'm running because I want to stop that. Second reason I'm running for City Council has to do with our schools. Mel mentioned that he's been in the neighborhood and his family went to schools here. Our children went to public schools here, and I worked as a public school teacher here. And finally, I served alongside Deputy Mayor Dennis Walcott, who led the campaign to stop the dropout crisis in New York City. And I was a part of that, and so I know what it means to have big school reform. As I'm sure you all know, our schools on the Upper West Side are the most segregated public schools in the whole city, and the city's one of the worst in the whole country. Finally, last reason I'm running has to do with small businesses. I think you'll hear a lot about that from the panelists tonight. I actually represent 150 small businesses in my work up in Yankee Stadium. I run the Business Improvement District. We have one of the most successful districts with one of the lowest vacancy rates in the whole city. And as I'm sure you've heard from Mel, he had a small business, but it went under. So that level of experience, and I don't believe the councilwoman has ever worked in a small business or outside of government. Have you? I'm interested to hear about that. But I think my experience running for 8 years the business district up at Yankee Stadium eminently qualifies me to be in this race, to win this race, and to bring the kind of leadership to the Upper West Side that we haven't had for the last 40 years. Thank you.
Can everyone hear me? Can you hear me in the back? No? What we need is a hearing loop in this room.
Okay, well, let's introduce the Councilwoman Helen Rosenbaum.
All right. This is Lamb's Bike Store out on Long Island. All right, you ready? Everyone in this room is upset about overdevelopment, and rightly so. The question is, how do we go about stopping overdevelopment, increasing affordable housing, and preserving our neighborhood? So here's the framework that I use in thinking about these things. Number one, developers hire lawyers and PR firms that get paid an awful lot of money, and their job is to find the technicalities to game the system for their advantage. The only way to stop them is to be better at finding the technical solutions. 2, the only solutions that count are ones that are, and the only solutions that count and are worth your time listening to are solutions that we can actually implement. The notion that there's an obvious fix is misleading at best. 3, we will never have unanimous consent on these issues. They're tough ones, and we're Upper West Siders. We're born to disagree about these things. Our goal, though, is to get the facts right, to have a demonstrably inclusive process where every voice is heard, even if the decision is not something that everyone agrees about. Technical solutions don't waste the public's time, and there's never going to be a kumbaya moment in every decision. Independently owned retail shops, same 3 principles. To opine on legislation that has no chance in being upheld in court or passing with a legislative vote is dishonest at best. 200 Amsterdam, another great example. The developer exploited an arcane set of rules, and rather than focusing on precedents, we focused on working with Landmarks West, Olive Freud, who hired a great planner, George Jane, and he identified an effective technical change to the plan. You'll hear tonight, and it's shown on the handout you may have, which was passed around about the land use deals, that I've been guided by these 3 principles and will continue to work with those.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we'll hear from Mr. David Owens.
Hi, good evening. I'd go out here, but you really are big, Bill. Get out of the way.
Do you want to go up front?
I'm good. No, I'm good right here. For those that don't know me, my name is David Owens. I'm a lifelong New Yorker. I've been in Upper West Side since 1971. First, I'd like to thank everybody for, is this good? Can everybody hear me? Thank everybody for coming out tonight. Thank you, Sean, for inviting me. But I'd also like to thank the other people up here. I think it's stated that anybody that wants to help my community, our community, I'm in favor of. I'm supportive of. Even though we're challengers here, we're all one community. So I thank each and every one of you for what you bring to the Upper West Side, and thank you so much for everything. Preservation of the Upper West Side, protecting our culture, people, institutions, businesses, and everything that makes the Upper West Side so special is of the utmost importance to myself and everybody on this panel. The work that Landmark does is by far essential and crucial to saving the dynamic structure of our community, and we should all support it. I usually like to use a medical analogy, continuity of care, making sure that we all continue to care for our communities in a healthy, efficient manner as we move forward. Actually, I'd like to use another medical term, the Hippocratic Oath, do no harm. Our community, our neighborhood is precious, and it's very important that we all protect the landmarks, the historical value of everything that is in our neighborhood, and that's why we're here tonight to talk about. I don't want to get too long-winded here. I think maybe enough questions, and you'll hear what our views are on a lot of the topics as well, but being a lifelong New Yorker, I went to school down the street, McMurray, which is no longer here, because there's a 42-story building condo that moved in when we lost our lease. McBurney School was there since 1916, and it was forced out from development. I do save on alumni dues, but I'm not really happy that we're not a school. But we need to protect our assets. And when I say assets, I mean our small businesses. We treated them like historical assets, the business itself, not the real estate. I think we can go very far into helping small businesses. That's something I'm going to talk about, and once my website, you go there, you'll see that we talk about that a little bit. But for now, I have 15 seconds, so I'll let Big Bill finish it up here. But thank you for your time, and I'll talk to you later.
Mr. Will Rockbush, please.
Hello, everyone. How's everyone doing? Are you doing okay? Great. We come here tonight for something important, which is our democracy. I'd first like to thank Landmark West for hosting this debate. If you're into preservation, preserving your quality of life, there's no better organization you become a part of, you support than Landmark West. That's very important. Please support them. I agree with our moderator when she said that democracy is messy. Indeed it is, and our democracy is currently in crisis. The United States is the most successful democracy in the history of mankind. And right now, we have a crisis of participation. Barely 1 million people participated in the last citywide mayoral election. That's 1 in 8 now, about 1 in 9 people participated. Our democracy's defining characteristic is that it requires participation. Now, why don't we have people participating? And what does this have to do with the city council race for the Upper West Side? Well, when our elected officials are out for themselves and their own personal political gain, as opposed to being public servants, we lose the voice of the next generation. Kids are smart enough to understand that their interests are not being represented, especially at the city and state level. Our governor took $100,000 donations to essentially block out the sun over Central Park and give those people tax abatements for their $90 million apartments. What does that have to do with representative government? Our city council is a wholly owned subsidiary of the development business and the real estate industrial complex. If you care about your quality of life, and you should, I believe that this is the best neighborhood on planet Earth. And I believe that our quality of life is our legacy, and that's being sold to the highest bidder. When our public assets are moved into private hands with barely a public hearing, when people tell us it's a done deal, like we were told about the AMNH on day one, when people try to build buildings that are illegal, like 200 Amsterdam, Olive Freud and I were the very first people who worked on that project. I filed a zoning challenge. I was in the very forefront of that. When we have people trying to build illegal buildings on our Upper West Side and our elected officials just stand by, we're completely losing this next generation of people. So this has everything to do with why Trump is in the White House. This has everything to do with our future. And don't you want to leave a quality of life strong enough that you had when you grew up? Don't you love your quality of life so much in your Upper West Side that you don't want it to be blocked out with super mega towers? Don't you want to have public parks or our future? Don't you want the disposition of public assets into private hands? Be told not just about the short-term benefits like the AMNH, but the long-term costs and how we plan for that, and what is our neighborhood going to be like when millions of people are now thrust into it? I'm running for city council because I'm an outsider. I have a clear and powerful voice in a city council of 51 people, and I am dead focused on preserving your quality of life and our legacy on the Upper West Side. Thank you very much.
Now, in the light of the context of this conversation, I think what we can all agree on is that when we look at the way our area is developed, that buildings and parks and streets and the like, and how they develop is basically a reflection of what we think our societal priorities are, in particular, what this community's priorities are. So for this first question, we're going to ask each candidate, we're going to give them 2 minutes. That said, on the surface, when one reviews your respective positions on issues that affect this community, it appears that most of you hold similar positions. How should prospective voters differentiate you and your candidacy with that of your challengers? Mr. Wyman first. Wymore, my apologies.
You should view us based on the results that we've produced and the concrete plans that we have. I've been in the Upper West Side, as I said, for almost 30 years, and I've stood up for developers and landlords that entire time. My first project was to stand up to a bad acting landlord and organize tenants, start a food program and health services in an SRO that was horribly undermanaged. After that, I stood up to a developer at the West Side Y and won a new community center and new teen center for kids in need after school. As a chair of Community Board 7, I stood up to developers by organizing the community, parents, housing advocates, urban planners, architects, to stand up, create our own plan against the biggest developer in the neighborhood, and produce real tangible results. Permanent affordable housing for the first time in the city, $20 million for our parks, and the first new public school. These are tangible results. Helen says that wishful thinking it's wishful thinking to think that we can reform land use laws. But we made those laws in the first place. And the only reason it would be wishful thinking is if you feel beholden to land use, real estate industry lobbyists. We don't have to do that. We can stand up to the lobbyists, and it takes an activist and an organizer to be able to do that. In terms of tall buildings, I championed a resolution on Community Board 7 2 years ago to put a moratorium on the tall buildings. There was no action on that almost unanimous vote. On ZQA and MIH, what Helen's referring to, the citywide upzoning, in spite of every single community board in Manhattan voting almost unanimously against MIH, against ZQA, Helen voted for it, along with the rest of the community, for the city council. We have to stand up. We have to have our voice heard. And that's how we make change. We can change land use policies. We can hold developers accountable. And we can make sure that we have public input every time a building goes up more than twice of its size.
Thank you, Mr. Martin.
That's what I stand for.
Well, it's going to be easy for me to distinguish myself from my opponents. Both Mel and Helen support the idea of having the American Museum of Natural History annex public parkland. Now, Helen has been very forthright about it, and I appreciate that from her. I think she's been quoted as saying the museum is a gem that we have to polish. It's about, I think now, $140 million worth of polish that we're using for that project. But she at least overtly supports the museum in that land grab. Mel, on the other hand, supports it, but sort of equivocates a bit about it because he says the process didn't allow for public input. We shouldn't have gone this far without the public being involved. I agree with that, but I disagree with coming out of that loop by saying you support the museum. Think about having $100 million to fix the subway problems in this neighborhood. Think about having $100 million to talk about science in our schools. By the way, the museum puts up this thing about science. We're furthering the issue of science. Do you know that in the United States, every student averages 1.5 hours per year studying climate change? How much of a dent in that is another big building in the Museum of Natural History going to make? It's ludicrous. So I can distinguish myself from my two colleagues very easily on the key issue in this community, and secondly, on the issue of segregated schools. And I'm sure we're going to get to that in another part of the conversation. Because unfortunately, like the issue with the museum, our councilperson has fumbled that issue and caused an enormous rift within the neighborhoods of this community. And I think, unfortunately, we haven't seen enough pushback from the other candidate in this area as well. So, thank you very much for your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Technical solutions don't waste the public's time, and there's never going to be a kumbaya moment when you're dealing with difficult issues. Tell me a time in history when we've discussed issues of race and class and desegregating schools that there hasn't been a division in the conversation. Mel talks about standing up to developers. Let's be clear. After Mel was chair of Community Board 7, he hired the developer's PR guy to run his advertising and press operation. If you look at this piece of paper, which we passed around, because you can't really talk about this in 2 minutes, but when you look at it, you can see that these are the only development projects that have come before our community. And in each and every one, my office got out ahead of it. Bill, I adore you, but we have been looking at 200 Amsterdam with the land use staff and the city council for a full year prior. We've been working with Landmarks West for the last year, trying to get ahead of the new development that's going up on West 66th Street. Take a little bit of time, get accurate facts, and what you're going to see is that the framework that matters is having technical solutions, not wasting the public's time, and being real about where you're going to go. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I think the question was what differentiates each of us from one another. I think a lot of the issues we agree on. Being very unique for me to be here, I think growing up in the community, understanding what it was before is very important. Keeping the continuity of the community as far as development is even more important. The tall buildings that are in place don't belong in our neighborhoods. I, for one, been here since 1971, so I lived it. I didn't have to learn about being on the Upper West Side. It's very important for us to understand that all these programs and all these things and all these developments that are going on in the Upper West Side are not always in the best interest of our community, period. And what you have to do is find ways and solutions to stop them before they even start. Don't allow them to grow and fester in our neighborhood. And that's kind of the thing I would do. I'd be very active, proactive at getting ahead of these things and these issues, whether it's in our parks, whether it's buildings, whether it's streets, whether it's bike lanes, whether it's traffic problems, whatever it is, I'd get ahead of and see a bigger plan for it. There's a lot of things in our neighborhood that have gone on that haven't been checked. That's a problem. It's like giving somebody an organ and not explaining to them, hey, you have years and years and a lifetime of meds to take. Right, you have the organ, but you don't know how to treat it. And that's what's going on in our community right now. And I think dropping the ball is not acceptable anymore. The Upper West Side is the greatest place in the world to me. And should be to all of us. We have to protect it. And that's what I'm all about, so.
Ms. Rodman.
So, sorry everyone, you're getting neglected, I'm sorry, this can't be helped. I was trying to think of a single candidate for city council Upper West Side who's going to come in here and tell you there are 4 tall buildings, there are 4 eliminating parkland, there are 4 traffic, there are 4 all of the worst things and the worst things that are coming in our neighborhood that are going to harm our quality of life. The fact is everyone's going to stand up here and more or less tell you what you want to hear. The question is, who do you believe? And I want to give you a phrase you can remember. It's 500 shadows. There are 2 separate words I just put together. 500, because I'm the only candidate proposing a hard cap of 500 feet on all buildings across the entire Upper West Side. I propose that on day 1 of my city council tenure. Now that may seem extreme or hardcore, but the fact is you have to understand how city council works. There are 51 city council members. If you are serious about zoning reform, and I am dead serious about zoning reform, your ask and your entry point has to be sky high, because you have to give the other side something to be able to walk away with when negotiations happen, and you have to be something tangible. And all we're really asking for here ultimately is for the laws and the rules to comport with the spirit in which they were written. And shadows. 500 shadows, because I propose no new shadows in public parkland. And when we reach the point, serious question. Have we reached the point of inequity in our city where only the wealthy and the powerful are entitled to sunlight? Our parks are our shared space, what the Greeks called the agora. That is a democratic community space. And I'll be damned if I'm going to sit by and watch the sun be blocked out from our community space, our democratic space. This is how our democracy becomes in crisis, is because the wealthy and the powerful are the most influential. So fundamentally, the difference is who are you going to believe and who has the strongest voice, because in a 51-person body, you have to have a strong, clear voice if you want to get anything done. Thank you very much.
I'll make life easier and I'll just hold this here.
I was gonna do that.
So, would you?
I'll be happy.
No, we're good. We're good. Now, as a matter of fact, Mr. Raudenbush's last comment actually leads us to our next question. And this first question is going to go to Mr. Goodman. One of the things that we notice about this entire process, the land use process, is that it is mostly controlled by the mayor's office. All the offices, all the different responding things actually have something to do with the mayor's office and how things proceed. That said, how do you see the city council having any sort of impact on land use issues, and in particular, as the new city council person, should you be elected, how would you handle those matters?
What are we getting, a minute for this? Should we all stand? Better do it.
However you'd like to do. If you'd like to sit, if you'd like to stand up, whatever is good for you.
I'll stand.
No, you got more.
Oh,
Here you go.
Thank you. First of all, the most important thing about the city council is, as Bill pointed out, to note that you're one of 51 people. So the whole question about what happens with the city council has to do with who those 51 members elect as speaker. The next one of us who takes hold at the city council will have a big obligation and responsibility to pick someone who will stand up to the mayor. The mayor controls landmarks. The mayor controls the buildings department. The mayor controls the Bureau of Standards and Appeals. All of those things are city agencies. All of those things come under his purview. And so, if you're like our incumbent and you are wedded to the mayor's position, you have endorsed the mayor even before he was found not to be indictable, then you're going to go along with the current trend in land use, in Board of Standard Appeals, and in landmarks. If you're like me, and I hope like Mel, you're going to want to vote for an independent speaker, which Melissa Mark-Viverito was not. You're going to want to have that person be a check of balance to the incredible executive power that a mayor has. And I think we're seeing on a national level what happens unless you have a legislative check on the executive. You get all kinds of crazy things happening. So that's the way I would combat the question of making sure that the city bureaucracy is responsive. You need to have a council that is not tethered to the mayor, but that can challenge the mayor, push the mayor, and make sure the mayor does what he's supposed to do to protect our neighborhood.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. What was the question again?
The question was, in terms of the mayor's office, what do you see the role of the city council in response to land use issues that is dominated by the mayor's office?
Right. So what we're really talking about there is mandatory inclusionary housing and zoning for quality and affordability. There we go. That's the point. Why did the city go through a massive citywide rezoning? Because there's an affordable housing crisis. It's the single biggest issue that people come into my office to talk about. People are hurting. They're getting harassed and evicted out of their homes. The first issue that the mayor and this city council took on was addressing that situation. Now let's remember, all the community boards did review it, and in Manhattan, what happened was the input from the community boards went to the borough president. What came out of that was the community boards, and specifically CB7, were very worried about sliver buildings going up. For those of you who were at those meetings, you recall it. What was the biggest thing I negotiated to make sure we didn't have or would allow to happen in ZQA? Sliver buildings. Look, when you look at, and then I just have to say one other quick thing. There are lots of community meetings on these issues. I've been, or my chief of staff has been at every single one of them. And just because there are some other people who aren't there, doesn't mean that they didn't happen.
Thank you, City Councilwoman, thank you. So in the interest of fairness, we initially said it was going to be a minute for each person to respond, and the Councilwoman was given 2. So in the interest of fairness, everyone will here have 2 minutes to respond to the question. Do you use the question right again?
No.
Two first, and then 1 minute response. Thank you.
As far as dealing with the mayor, I think, like in anything, you have to come, you have to work together. You have to oppose things that you don't believe in. And the way you oppose things is through communication. I think there's a lack of communication from all constituents on the Upper West Side. There's 180,000 of us, and only a few people are represented in scenes or involved in the process. Getting civically engaged and getting behind what one of us are doing here would be very important. It's really critical that we all work together as one voice when we are opposing the mayor. Protecting the vertical from the federal, state, and municipality are very important. But in this situation, it is on us. The city, the mayor, is in charge of a lot of things that affect all of us. So unless we are one voice and we work together, it's never ever going to happen. And the mayor is always going to be dominant over us. But if we can come together as a youth group, and what I plan on doing is communicating with everybody in our community through smart technology, through community boards, through everything, through block associations, whatever. We have to get everybody involved. The lack of participation, not you guys are here, you're great, but there's a lot of people in our community that do not participate. We have to reach out to them, get them involved, and come as one strong voice up against the mayor when we disagree on something. It can't just be a few of us at every event, fighting, picketing, being advocates for things. We have to come together, and I don't think there's been enough outreach in our community, our whole community, everybody in our community. So I think that is basically what I would do to combat the mayor's power.
Bill de Blasio, Big Bill, Big Bird, some people call him. Bill de Blasio got elected on 65% real estate donations. Now, we need to immediately change what doing business with the city means, because if you're a developer, you can only give so much Bill de Blasio, but if you're a financer, or if you're a secondary person in that business, you can give as much as you want. Now, I'm not going to use my language to hit Bill de Blasio. I'll use current U.S. Attorney Kim's language, which is that Bill de Blasio violated the spirit and the intent of the corruption laws. Now, the corruption laws are very tricky and they're very tough to get a conviction, but Bill de Blasio has a long rap sheet of pay-for-play and leaning heavily on city agencies in order to give away to developers. Specifically, Rivington House on the east side, where he took a nursing home and a business that owned the city multi-million dollars. He leaned on them so that the developer could turn around and get a multi-million-dollar flip on that property of a nursing home. And in exchange for his troubles, he got donations. And the governor is just as bad, if not worse. The governor's taken twice as much shadowy money as the previous 2 governors combined. We don't talk about Cuomo a lot, but he has a lot of relevancy here. So what am I going to do in order to bring that to bear? Well, first off, I'm going to say that Bill de Blasio is the cause of a lot of our problems. You have to be able to say that if you are seriously standing up for him. Secondly, I will not support this current thing going to the city council where they're going to use the environment as a way of getting Bill de Blasio to have his own little department in the mayor's office where he can take, if you slap a solar panel on something, they can fast track your building project. The mayor needs less power when it comes to zoning and development community, but not more power. We need to strengthen all the 197As, those are like ULURP and all those other processes, immediately. And we need to bring community input back into the process that has been lost over years of this corrupt pay-for-play. Thank you very much.
question goes to the councilman. I'm sorry.
Mel.
I didn't get to.
My apologies, I'm sorry. Mr. Wymore, my apologies.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay, thank you. In terms of the way the council is structured and the relationship to the mayor, I have one answer. Organize, organize, organize. We need an activist city council. A city council that not only deals directly every day, knocking on doors, doing community meetings, bringing people together around these issues, but we need an activist city council that's going to organize amongst themselves and advocate for their residents and find the commonalities in our city to preserve the neighborhoods and retain the character and quality of our neighborhoods and have them be inclusive neighborhoods as well. The only way to do that is to elect city council members who are organizers, who are activists, and who are independent of special interests. And when I say that, I mean not accepting donations from developers as a part of your campaign process. In 2013, I returned checks from developers. We have canceled checks from every developer that contributed to my campaign along with a letter. Sorry, we don't want your money, but without prejudice, we're returning your checks. That's what independence looks like. I want to talk about what Helen said about technical solutions. I am talking about technical solutions. We produce technical solutions on the community board every time when we organize appropriately and influence law. We downzoned the entire west side north of 96th Street. We stood up and against these banks and drugstores and created new storefront zoning that kept our storefronts smaller. And if you remember the West Side Stadium when Bloomberg really wanted it, and the West Side organized and made that stop. Organization is the way to handle this. The map that Helen is showing you, where they just chimed in and said they're against development, that's not even close to what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the development on 83rd Street, the one on 80th Street, the ones that are cropping up all over our neighborhood. And they require no review, and we need to change that.
Thank you. This question is to Ms. Rosenthal, and to be followed by everyone else. We're going to stick with the 2-minute rule for every candidate. In the interest of transparency, what endorsements have you received, including political and financial contributions from real estate interests? And more importantly, keeping in mind the importance of endorsements and political contributions in the election process, how do you balance competing community interests when money is involved?
Great question. It's over here. Okay, great question. Thank you so much for that. So, you know, it's funny, the notion that you would return a donation from a developer. No developer has ever thought to donate to my campaign. That's why I've never returned. I've been endorsed by Tenants PAC, which is the premier advocacy group representing the interests of rent-regulated tenants. I cherish that endorsement. I got it in 2013, and I got it early this time round. I'm most proud, and if you go on my website, you'll see this, of the endorsements from advocacy groups. And I'll talk about it a little bit later, but New York Immigration Coalition endorsed me. I've been working with the immigrant community over the past 4 years. The Sierra Club endorsed me, and the New York League of Conservation Voters. They know my record. They've worked with me over the past 4 years. Stonewall Democrats, on the day that Trump announced the Muslim ban, I mean, not Muslim, yet another offensive thing, the ban on transgenders in the military, Stonewall Democrats endorsed me for re-election. I scored a perfect 100%, one of only 5 council members at the Jim Owls Club, which is the most left-leaning LGBT club in the city, a perfect score of 100%. Yes, go down on my website and look at the unions that have endorsed me. They didn't endorse me in 2013, but they endorsed me now because they've worked with me on all of these
Thank you, Ms.
issues.
Rosen.
Thank you.
Are you coming forward or are you sitting?
Oh, no, I was helping with the chair.
Thank you.
You're
I have to get used to that. Appreciate it.
Are we going this order?
Yeah, I think you're
Mr.
next.
Owens?
Well, I may be a neophyte to this process, but I'm not new. I haven't, or I'm planning not to take anything from real estate developers in any way, fashion, and that's why I'm running as an independent also. I don't want to be tied to any kind of organization or entity that might sway the way we do things and do business here. And the real estate development lobbyists for them is not something that I plan on being involved with. So I don't really have much more to say about that since I'm new here. I hope to get some endorsements eventually, but that is my situation right now.
Mr. Alves?
It'd be kind of amusing if someone from real estate approached me and tried to give me money. Yeah, I coined the term real estate syndicate because that's exactly what they are. And it's not just real estate that's corrupting our government, it's pretty much all the PACs. Recently the Speaker of City Council let go somebody because they stood up and said that we need a New York Constitutional Convention. Now, without getting too inside baseball, essentially there's a whole host of electoral reforms, including ballot access, and the kind of mundane things that make our democracy flourish that have been lined up for a long time that we just can't get done. So a Constitutional Convention would have them do that and get your power of your vote back to your voice. Because here's what happens. You go into the ballot, you go to the voting booth, and you cast your vote. That is the most your vote is ever going to count. Because the second that day is over, that's when the lobbyists go to work. And that's when the special interests go to work. And that's when the powerful interests go to work. And the people who bundle donations go to work. And that's when they take your single vote and they turn it into a fraction of its former self. I will not only now take money from real estate, it's kind of funny even the idea, but I will ban every last lobbyist from my office, and I will say to them kindly, they can come with me as much as they want. This sounds bold, silly, but lobbyists' whole job is to dilute our vote, and that's why people don't participate. And it's too important. Our future will be filled with Donald Trump so we don't restore democracy to the people. So I not only reject wholly donations from special interests, but I will reject money from all of the PACs and all the people who bundle votes so that they can dilute your voice. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr.
The answer to this question is plain and simple. We have to continue taking the money out of politics. Just take it out of politics. And there are many models for doing this. One is in Seattle where they have voucher system, voters get vouchers. Because elections do cost money, campaigns do cost money. But there's ways that we can level the playing field and get special interests out of politics. The second big issue on endorsements, incumbents get endorsed. That's the way it works, right? It's a system of incumbents endorsing incumbents, and people getting favors from that endorsement. That's the way it works. And one last thing, Hollis Development contributed $1,000 to from Dana Lowry of Hollis Development contributed $1,000 to Helen Rosenthal's campaign, among others.
Which is not a high-rise luxury developer.
Excuse me, please, stop the time.
Sorry.
Let's not interrupt.
We have to be vigilant, we have to be proactive, we have to do everything we can to say no to the money, no to the lobbyists, no to the developers. And the way we do that is supporting each other as activists, as organizers, as citizens of the common community that we all love and share. That's my answer.
In December, I wrote an article for the Gotham Gazette. It was called Done Deal Democrats. Done deal Democrats. We live in a one-party city, completely controlled by the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party, incumbents included, endorse each other, fundraise for each other, network for each other, and the result is that the community is left out. You can see it so starkly in what's happened with the museum. Museum proposal never came to the community, never had a conversation led with or by our city council member. In fact, my wife and I went to 9 community board meetings in a row, 9 months in a row, and they asked to put that topic, asked to put that topic on the agenda, couldn't get it through. Done deal Democrats shrink the democratic space so that it fits themselves and the special interests that they represent. I have no contributions from lobbyists. I have no contributions from developers. We had 40 people go out and collect over 1,400 signatures, all volunteer. Unfortunately, I think some of my colleagues paid people to go out and collect signatures. All volunteer effort to make sure that done deal Democrats were beaten back. Now, last thing. How did we get the museum project to begin with? Lobbyists. The museum spent $2 million lobbying the council member, lobbying the borough president, lobbying the mayor, and trying to make sure that we were kept out of that conversation. So when you think about what's going on in our council race, please remember, the Democratic Party has sort of become turned in on itself and turned us out from it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Goodman. We started talking about the American Museum of Natural History because that is the topic we'll turn to next. We will be starting with Mr. Owens with this question. In providing an assessment of the planned expansion of the museum, what do you view as the top 3 benefits associated with the museum expansion? And at the same time, what are your top 3 peeves or deficits with regards to the expansion?
That's a good question.
The expansion project at the Museum of Natural History, where I grew up playing tag and running around the hallways, would be a center for people to come from all over to learn. Any place that provides learning for our youth, I'm all for. It also provides jobs and opportunities for employment in our neighborhood, and hopefully they will be mandated to hire people from within our community to work there. Some of the peeves, depending on how the construction goes, it's going to disrupt traffic, be very loud. We already have enough noise provided in our neighborhood thanks to the traffic that's been caused from the bike lanes and other things that haven't been really regulated very well by our precincts. Yeah, I'm not a big fan, even though I ride a bike. But for the most part, I'm for the project. I think it's an unbelievable thing that we are going to get for our community, and it just helps us grow probably the greatest museum, I think, in the world, and add to the texture of our community. So I'm very much in favor of it, as long as there's restraints as far as how it's built and how it's going to be run, as far as hiring people and getting the traffic and the buses there and stuff like that. I hope they need a plan. A lot of times they throw things on the wall, they don't have a plan afterwards. And I think that's really crucial. And I think it's very important for us to really see the big picture of how it's going to affect our community. Being for something doesn't mean that there aren't any consequences for them coming here. So as long as we have a plan, I think it's a good idea.
Mr. Avamish.
As the recent step down as one of the leaders of Community United to protect Theodore Roosevelt Park. So
Bill's not gonna like that.
This issue is central, and the 3 benefits. Wow, let's see. A billionaire gets his building with his name on it, largely funded by city tax dollars. Number 2, they will in fact improve some of their circulation there. Now, although they may improve some circulation, they do that without a master plan. So it's kind of like building a railroad straight to the side of a mountain and deciding once you get there how you're going to get over the mountains. The second thing, and the third thing is there will be science. There will in fact be some exhibition space in a few classrooms, but if you really look at the details of the project, precious little compared to an atrium that is larger than the size of the public park it seeks to occupy. Now for the negatives. First one is it's a great illustration of how money and politics work in the city at the expense of the overwhelming majority of people who live in that immediate area. To put possibly millions of people on that side by creating a new major entrance and not accurately or honestly doing the traffic study. I mean, we hired our own environmental study, and it was galling and shocking the kinds of impacts this is going to have for the community. I mean, they're going to have to replace windows in 3 whole buildings because of 3 years of over-the-top construction work, releasing toxins. It's unbelievable. And the big negatives are that we are going to continue to dispose of public parkland into private hands without articulating to the community not just the short-term benefits, but the long-term costs. And we're going to have to come back and fight them again and again and again until they take up all the parkland as they so clearly have intention. Now, it's not easy to stand up to a museum. It feels kind of gross, and it did in the beginning, to stand up to an institution that's bringing science education to our community. But you know what? It's the right thing to do. And if I look at the facts of a project and it's the right thing to do, then there it is. And it may not be popular outside our little zone, but it is the right and proper decision, and it is the classic example of what is wrong with our city politics.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you very much.
Three benefits. The Natural History Museum is a world-class institution, provides education to millions of people each year. It is a collection-based institution, so it draws people from all over the city, all over the world, especially underprivileged communities, get a chance to come and see science on the Upper West Side. And third, the museum brings business to the Upper West Side, and we thrive because of the people that come here and shop in our stores when they also shop at the museum. So those are benefits, and I'm not against the Natural History Museum. But it's unconscionable that public dollars went to a project of millions of dollars, and some of them being public, without proper public notice, or public hearings, or public input. If I were elected to City Council, I would freeze the public funding until we had full public input on this project. And I would bring together, as I did in 2012, I would bring together all of the stakeholders around the museum, including the BID, the museum, the people that are part of the park, Friends of the Park, the block associations, and bring them together and discuss how to mitigate every single aspect of this project. And that comes to the downside of the project. The downside is that the building is too big, it takes parkland, the traffic is, the congestion that will emanate from that project will be considerable and needs to be mitigated. The building is not sustainable. It is not a model of science in the 21st century or anything close to it, and we need to hold the museum feet to the fire to make sure that it is a sustainable demonstration of new energy sources. And finally, construction is tough. In that area, it's very noisy, it's going to be very difficult for the surrounding community, and we have to do everything we possibly can to make sure the community is served to its full extent. Thank you.
Well, I think you've just heard from Mel, and we're going to hear from Helen. The pitfalls of the museum project are enormous. Every year, the city will be responsible for paying $15 to $20 million to heat, cool, and power this new building if it goes forward. There's also a social cost attached to a building of this size. 2 professors from Harvard who were hired by the Obama administration figured out that for every ton of pollution that's put up into the atmosphere, it costs the general public $36. Okay? Well, this building is going to put 2 million tons of pollution into our already dirty air. So at a cost of $72 million a year. Never mentioned in the statistical analysis of the museum or its impact on our neighborhood. What are the 3 worst things? First, Mel mentioned underprivileged community. We are an overprivileged community. I counted 22 museums and cultural organizations in our neighborhood. Do we need another one? Compared to the Bronx, compared to sections of Queens and Brooklyn, those are cultural deserts. And yet we have the audacity from our council person onward to take public money. It doesn't just belong to the Upper West Side. It's not just our tax base that's going to the museum. $100+ million of public money and giving it to this, which only reinforces the cultural inequalities that exist in our community. Now, the good things about it, we're going to stop it. We're not going to let it take hold of our neighborhood. We're going to make sure it becomes a community idea like it is.
Thank you, David. I like that. Thank you very much. Okay, again, can we start with some facts? Did everyone get the handout on the American Museum of Natural History? If you didn't get it, can you raise your hand and my staff will get you a sheet of paper that lays out the facts, which address all of the misleading information that's been talked about just now. So what are the 3 great things about it? Well, I'm going to start by saying what my colleagues have said in the City Council. Jimmy Van Bramer, Chair of the Culturals Committee, thrilled, proud to vote for it. Richie Torres, who represents the poorest section probably in the Bronx, really excited about it. Why? Because if you understand what the project is, what they're doing is shining a gem. They're opening up the opportunity for more robust science education and research. I want to be clear about this. The past Mayor Bloomberg started putting money in the budget for this project. Our former borough president, Scott Stringer, our current borough president, then city council person, Gail Brewer, who still is putting money in, but they put money into the budget. Every member of the city council voted for this project because they don't want to see it in the Bronx. They find that deeply offensive, that they would get AM&H light while we continue to get accurate and good science.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please. Go forward! Please. Stop. Please. We are here to reason together. And we are here to listen. And you will have an opportunity to ask questions. Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Now, this question is going to start with Mr. Rautenbush. Do you think that the American Museum of Natural History should replace the parkland in kind for the 0.27 acres that the extension will be occupied?
To be clear, because I think we've lost a little bit on this project, we're not anti-museum, we're pro-park. We want them to build. You expand what you want, do it on your existing footprint, don't take precious public parkland to do it. One of the largest footprints in the world for any museum, one of the largest in the world. Build on it. Fix your existing problems on it. So the public trust doctrine, we're talking about parks and what they should replace in kind. It specifically states that if you take away public parkland for any use, you essentially have to show a benefit to the park user, not to the private institution, not to science, but to the park user. So it's a completely broken community review process when there is none, where they're trying to claim that they don't need to get approval from the legislature, which is what you typically have to do if you're going to alienate public parkland. So it's a completely broken process. Now, they haven't even bothered to fund the changes to the parkland. We're going to have to fund that too. So all the changes, all the new concrete for the people, that isn't even funded yet. So an institution is going to take public money to expand their footprint along with their private donor to create, and please look at this project because, I don't want to harp on this because there's so many more things to talk about, But look at this project, and look at this atrium that's larger than the public parkland seeks to take. It's a gala space, people, you know, and it's gonna be a fancy gala space. Now, if we just gave in, you know, saying that you're going to, we're not stopping science, okay? They have plenty of space they can repurpose, and they can build on their existing footprint. And the fact that they won't provide any sort of a master plan moving forward is a ridiculous and cynical thing. Now, of course, other council people voted for it, just as I would have before I knew all of the gritty details about it. It took me 5 times of seeing a flyer before I actually showed up to a meeting, because opposing a cultural institution is just not something we do naturally. But if the facts are what the facts are, then this is ridiculous that we're losing public parkland to a private institution and paying $135 million plus for the privilege.
Mr. Rowden. Thank you. Mr. Rowden.
The fact that other city council members supported this project is irrelevant. The tradition of the city council is to defer to the council member of the district in Maine, where the project exists. So that's just a natural courtesy afforded to the council member unless there's real knowledge about what's going on. In terms of the parkland, I would much prefer the museum. We already managed to, thanks to the advocates and the organization that happened with Bill and Carrie and others, already pushed that museum design back. It was originally at the street level, almost all the way out to the street, taking up a huge swath of the park. And that was pushed back considerably to the point where it's 0.2 acres. But I feel that we could actually work with the museum and all of the stakeholders and push it back even more, such that we don't have to mitigate the park impact, that there is no park impact. I think that all of the functions of that museum, the goal the museum has set out for this project could be met with a smaller building. But secondly, in failing that negotiation, there is no question in my mind, every square inch of park space must be 100% accounted for. We cannot afford to lose green space in this city. We have to fight for every inch. And I have a record of doing that in supporting the reclamation of Dam Rush Park. I have built new parks and raised money for new parks in Riverside Park South. And we need to plan ahead in this community and make sure that we protect our open spaces and expand our open spaces, because that's what makes quality of life really great on the Upper West Side.
Well, I met my wife in a park. We were jogging around the reservoir. I was going one way, she was going the other way. Stopped, turned around. 38 years later, we're together.
And his grandchild.
Yeah. And so I have a deep affection for parks. And I think that Bill touched a little bit on it earlier about parks being probably the only democratic space we have nowadays. It costs nothing to get into a park, so rich and poor are there. You can be loud, you can be quiet, you can be moving on a skateboard, you can be reading a book. My wife and I saw Philip Roth sitting in Theodore Roosevelt Park months ago. What a delight that was. Not 1 inch of this park should be taken over by that museum. It's got to stop. Now, there have been a series of things about the building was going to go this far, and it's only going that far, it was going to be this big, it's going to be that big. Let me tell you what I know. The Wall Street Journal reported, after 5,000 people signed petitions, after we had a protest in front of the councilwoman's office, after everybody knows the heinous impact of this museum, after all that, the museum submitted a new plan. It was 8% bigger, 8% more costly, and it generated another $9 million from our council member, who just this round put more money in to fund that building. So let's not get too caught up on it was here, it's now only there, it's going here, it's only going to be that. Let's get rid of it now.
You can do it. Just get up and say you won't fund it. I'll vote for you.
We're going to get to that again. Let's be clear. There are facts that tell the story of this museum, please refer to the fact sheet that's sent out. Don't, let me say it in a positive way. It would be great if everyone in this room could read the fact sheet and know what the truth is about the museum, how it's funded, what'll happen during construction, which of course will be that the community is protected. That's what the Department of Environmental Protection does and Department of Buildings throughout the district and the city. Construction happens all the time, right? So look down at 59th Street and the river. That was a parking garage. Now there are high-rises going up on it. The buildings that live right next door to that place, really tightly next door, all of those people were protected. The role of a city council person is to do two things. One, represent the city. And for that reason, all council members cherish the cultural institutions throughout the city. It's what brings in tourism. It's what educates all of us. But it's also the job of the council member to make sure that the local little neighborhood around it is protected. And that is what I assure you I will do. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman.
I tend to agree with you on this, Helen. Just because we're in favor of an expansion to the museum doesn't mean we're anti-park. That's ridiculous. I grew up in Central Park, I love the park. That's why I live here on the Upper West Side. I think I was in favor of Westway back in the day. I was too young to remember it, but that would have added a lot of public lands, but I'm old. But all the technicalities and all that stuff are very important. As Ellen said, do not disturb the neighborhood. But it's going to disturb the neighborhood, and that's what progress does. And we want to conserve as much of the park as we can, but there might be an instance where some of the park is taken away to bring this unbelievable institution to an even further level. Shining that diamond, I believe in it. Okay? We might not agree on a lot of things, but this is one of the things I do agree on. And I feel your passion, Big Bill and Mel and Karen we just met. But for me, I want the expansion. And I want it to be as painless as possible, even though there's going to be pain. But without the progress, we have no future. So we need to make sure that everything is checked and done correctly, all the environmental studies are done correctly, all the traffic, all the sanitation, everything's done correctly. And we can have a nice expansion. And if we happen to lose some of the park, I know not a very popular stance right here, but it's going towards progress. And let's focus on other parts of our neighborhood. That's where I stand.
This is actually a very important point of conversation. Two of our candidates, Dr. Goodman as well as Mr. Rautenbush, have focused their attention on the development of the museum as being a primary focus. That said, I'm going to ask for a simple yes or no question, and that is this, starting with Mr. Wymore. Are the other candidates willing to accept the positions of Mr. Rautenbush and Dr. Goodman as they present them? And if so, will that mean that Dr. Goodman and Mr. Rautenbush would consider withdrawing their candidacy?
They don't have the same position.
That's fine, we can talk.
Let's get to the public question.
That would be next.
Do you understand that question?
Sort of.
I'm not
Basically,
following the question.
we agree with those.
I understand what you're saying.
I agree with
You understand the
I
question?
do.
Okay, let me explain the question again. We have two candidates who have specifically made the museum their focal point of their campaign. That said, unless they have any other position that they're running for in terms of city council, That means that unless other candidates are willing to take on that position, there's really no need for them to be in the race unless they have other issues.
You're hijacking the
Excuse me. Excuse me. Excuse me. Can we move forward? Okay. Excuse me. That said, in all fairness, given the time, what we will then do is move on to the community questions. Fair? Thank you.
Who started?
It'll be Mr. Weinberg.
Oh, I want to answer that question.
That's okay.
Now I understand it.
I told you.
I was good to go.
I think she said you were one trick pony.
Yeah, it's really outrageous. It's like, it's an outrageous question.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Yeah.
we will start with Mr. Weinberg
outrageous.
first.
Outrageous question.
These are questions with regards to housing. I am Mrs. Stanley, and I've known Helen Rosenthal for 30 years. I'm from a NYCHA building. At my building, there have been several problems, and Councilwoman Rosenthal helped with problems and other tenants had in the building. Okay. I'm sorry, this is not a question. This is a All right. How are you supporting affordable senior housing?
Good question.
Mr. Weinberg.
The reason we have no affordable senior housing on the Upper West Side is because we have real estate developers that are coming in and jacking up the prices by building luxury housing and not providing any low or middle income housing, especially for seniors. The solution of the city is to give tax breaks to billionaires to let them build higher buildings in the community and then in exchange for a small modicum of affordable housing. So far, we haven't seen that work on the Upper West Side, and this tax break system, which Helen voted for and all the community boards voted against, is profoundly misguided. We need to build, we need to actually collect the taxes and build human scale affordable housing for seniors. The other thing we need to do is make sure that we preserve the housing we have. We have senior housing in the community. Seniors are getting priced out of their homes. They're getting pushed out by landlords. And we have to fight to make sure that they can stay in their homes. But the way we're going to do that is not by selling out our air rights and selling out our community and selling out the quality of life on the Upper West Side. The way we're going to do that is to incentivize human scale developments and make sure that we have the subsidies in place to keep seniors in their homes. That's how we're going to do that.
Well, 40 years ago, I started something called the Senior Olympics. We started the first one ever in Riverside Park. Now, 40 years later, of course, I need the Senior Olympics to help me with my issues of daily living. But I just want to say that this year, in my capacity, I work as the business improvement director up at Yankee Stadium, and I run the neighborhood up there. And on occasion, I have the opportunity to go down to the city council and listen to different hearings on certain topics. And this year, I went down to listen to and to participate in discussion of senior citizens, because I noticed in a report that the comptroller issued that our neighborhood in the last 15 years has increased the senior population by 40%. That's enormous. I wanted to see, was there going to be a corresponding increase from the budget for social services, for Meals on Wheels, for senior housing, for all the kinds of things that people need, both to stay in their homes, to have affordable residences, and to get the services they need, because there's long waiting lists for all that kind of stuff. I listened to the discussion. Unfortunately, the one voice that I went to hear most, that I was hoping to hear most, our own council person, was absent from that review. It was the Department of the Aging. They were looking at what was happening with senior citizens, and I thought for sure, given that our population increase of 40%? That would generate an intense interest on her part. It didn't. She wasn't at the hearing. I tried repeatedly to find out if she had left a statement for the hearing or in some way tried to participate. No. And it's just like the public hearing that they held for the museum recently. A public hearing, but no public officials, no public input. June 15th, it's on the record. The mayor was in the neighborhood, but he didn't stop by for the public hearing. He had a secret meeting with the museum officials.
Thank you, Dr. Goodman. Councilwoman Rosendahl.
Yep. Thank you. Carrie, thank you for the layout. So one of the things that I've been working so hard over the past 3 years is to make sure our senior centers are adequately funded. I'm happy to, you can go on my website, Helen 2017. It was a great victory this past fall. The city added $40 million to make sure that our contracts with providers are sufficient in order to do the work that we ask them to do. I wasn't at that hearing, but I was at a lot of other meetings that helped make that happen. What are we doing about affordable housing on the Upper West Side? For those of you who may have been on the community board, we're using what's called the collegiate money to preserve affordable housing exclusively around in the Community Board 7 district. And over the past 3 years, we've been able to identify 3 buildings of senior housing that money will go to preserve. It's incredibly exciting. And most importantly, the City Council just passed a law called Right to Counsel, which means that going forward, everyone, not just seniors, will have a lawyer when they go into housing court. Once you have a lawyer, you're going to win, because what the landlords have is lawyers 90% of the time, and 90% of the time they win. And lastly, let's be clear, MIH and ZQA, which is the zoning rules that we changed, have nothing to do with tax rates. It's the state that can regulate the city's taxes. I wish we had home rule on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Ms. Williams.
Thank you. Welcome. I keep forgetting what I'm supposed to do.
Senior housing. Obviously, we want to maintain all the senior housing that we have in our neighborhoods, the Gotta Riverside community centers of the world. And we also want to, when the opportunity comes up, to build new housing. But besides that, we need to do some things to protect and encourage what we have now. The SPRE program, very helpful with seniors. It's very, very positive.
Yeah.
Make sure that seniors are able to afford where they are, freezes their rent. We also have to help the small landlords that have these apartments in the first place, so that the difference between what they're paying and what they're charging is relaxed. I'm not sure exactly what the statutes would be or the bill would be passed, but we need to help the small landlords that have seniors living in their building. And thirdly, we need to expand the NORC program. In my building, where I serve on the board and been on the board, we have a NORC program.
Yep.
We have naturally occurring retirement centers in our neighborhood because the people that came here in the 60s and 70s are now seniors. It's a very successful program in our building, and Helen's office does support it. JASA does support it as well. We need to expand it to all the buildings so that people that are in existing buildings don't have to move out to a separate individual facility, but they can stay in their own homes if they have the support. A lot of times, all they need is support. And expanding the NORC program throughout the Upper West Side and throughout the city is one way to do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
First, I just have to be clear that I'm not a one issue candidate. It's a little ridiculous. I'm talking myself up here, but land use is a central part of my campaign, as is the budget, as is transportation, as is all of our quality of life things. And before I forget, on a positive note, I would like to thank my partner Ginger for being so supportive during this process. It's stressful to run for office, and you have to thank your family because they have to put up with you while you're stressed out running for office. So thank you, honey. I really love you. Okay, one round of applause for Ginger.
You're here.
So we have a huge population of baby boomers that is going to be, or at least many of whom are retired, many will be seniors soon. And we're talking about senior housing. You need to first look at our affordable housing that we currently have. We need to hold on to it. That is the number one task of anything to do with housing. It's under constant assault. We're hemorrhaging affordable housing, and people just do not get the support that they always need when it comes to holding on to their affordable housing. Now, I'm a fifth floor walk-up market rate guy. I recently successfully negotiated my rent down this major life. So I don't personally live in affordable housing, but I know the problem of affordability, and the second a senior loses their affordable housing, that's it for them. They have to leave the city, and oftentimes they don't have the support or the wherewithal or the place to go, and sometimes even we make these people homeless, if you can believe that.
Yeah.
We have no transitional housing in the city, which basically means that if you lose your housing, you basically go into the homeless housing section. There's no there's no placeholder for you where you find future housing. That's something that needs to be addressed immediately. But also we need to get a affordability metric about how many units of affordable housing we have, how many we're losing, and why we're losing to immediately address the hemorrhaging. Before we can build new affordable housing, we have to address the fact that we're losing it left, right, and otherwise. Thank you.
Thank you. In the interest of time, and we're going through a lot of the questions are very similar. So we're going to ask 3 more questions of the candidates and then ask them to wrap up in terms of their series. One of the questions has to do with small businesses. A recent study by the Manhattan Borough President showed that there are 188 vacant properties where former small businesses resided. The question to the candidates is, what can be done to make residential as well as commercial rents more affordable, since this seems to be the cause as to why many small businesses go out of business? Dr. Vin?
Well, as I mentioned, I represent 150 businesses in the commercial corridor around Yankee Stadium and the central business district of the Bronx. And I think I also stated that we have one of the lowest vacancy rates of any neighborhood in the city. How does that happen? Well, part of it involves thinking about how you're going to retain businesses, as well as how you're going to recruit and attract new businesses. I don't know how active our current council member has been on trying to attract new businesses, but it's impossible to walk through the neighborhood on Columbus, Amsterdam, Broadway, and not notice that we have an enormous number of vacancies everywhere. I have a very simple solution for that. I don't think you're going to, and I'm sorry about this, talking to Mel, I don't think you're going to be able to get greedy landlords to cooperate. The real estate market, the real estate industry is like every other industry. It's looking to maximize its profits. I don't think they're trying to show their good nature to stores that can't meet their rent. What I think you can do, though, is put together a piece of legislation. It's on my website, votecarriegoodman.com, called the Legacy Stores Act. Barney Greengrass, Zingoni's Grocery, small stores, community stores, stores that have been in our neighborhoods for decades would get a tax credit as against their lease renewals. So let's say like Caesar's Pizza, they were paying $8,000 rent a month. It got jacked up to $16,000. They fled. The Legacy Stores Act would meet the landlord and the tenant somewhere between those two numbers and try to fill in the gap for what the landlord expects to get out of their property and what the tenant can afford to pay for. So it'd be tax credits as against lease renewals. And I'd like to invite both of the two Democratic Party candidates, Helen and Mel, look at the Legacy Stores Act on my site. Maybe you'll support that as well.
Thank you, Dr. Goodman.
Oh, thank you. I'm loving the gentleman. Sure. So again, The only solutions that count and are worth your time hearing and thinking about are solutions that we can actually implement. To misrepresent as an obvious fix solutions that have no chance in surviving a court challenge or a legislative vote, or are things that only the state has the authority to do, is a waste of people's time, and frankly, it's deceptive. Let me tell you what I've been doing over the past 4 years. I introduced, and we're very close to passing, a bill that will relieve the commercial rent tax for nearly 4,000 small businesses in Manhattan. We have, on a regular basis, we have small business clinics, very much like our housing clinics, where small businesses come, they're connected directly with the Department of Small Business Services, and we've had some successes in people renegotiating leases and getting access to credit. The solution has to be thoughtful. It's a city-wide problem. I mean, Gail's right about the number of vacancies, but this is happening throughout New York City. We're going to have a zoning change, a commercial zoning overlay, and we're going to have legislation. The piece of legislation that I'm introducing is to put a fee to require the landlords to register their vacancies, and then they'll get fined if they don't do so. It's basically a vacancy fee on the empty storefronts. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman.
David, sorry.
Thank you.
I think we all agree that small businesses, the mom and pop shops in our neighborhood need to be protected. Until we consider them protected classes, it's really going to be difficult. I would propose legislation always to stop the harassment of tenants in our neighborhood, period. I would enforce this to the nines. In my building, we've had 2 commercial tenants, and we had to take a conscious effort to take less money to make sure that we have a quality of life issue here. We have a supermarket in our neighborhood. They're going away with the Buffalo. They're going bye-bye. So we, as a collective group in our board, decided we'd rather have this supermarket here and gouge them. And we worked together with the owners, and now we have a lease agreement on the table. It's going to keep a supermarket in the Upper West Side when other ones are closing. The Christie's and 86th Street is closing, the one in 96. Even though they might become convenience stores, it's a conscious effort by us, our boards, of our neighborhood to make sure that we're not greedy. Okay? Also, I agree with Mr. Goodman. There's a proposal J out in San Francisco, and they treat small businesses as legacies. And what this basically means, if you've been in our neighborhood a certain amount of time and you've contributed to the historical value of our neighborhood, they should be protected through grants, or what you said, tax abatement. It's the business itself, it's not the real estate, that needs to be protected. And most of these small businesses are owned by minorities, people of low income, and we need to protect them, period. So there's a lot of solutions. We have limited land, and because our community is so great, people want to come here, and supply and demand, people jack up the rent. So we need these protections, whether it's through legislative means, whether it's through common sense means, and negotiating, tax reform, or grants to help them. We need to do something and do it immediately, because I'm sick and tired of seeing empty stores. It's terrible. I miss Jackson Hole already.
Thank you, Mr. Owens. Mr. Owens.
Well, first off, you have to understand that the problem with retail vacancies is actually an incredibly complicated problem, and one more complicated than even you might think. It has to do sometimes with the underlying value of the person who owns the property, what they can charge in rent, what that does to their possibly a construction contract on the side. It has to do with the fact that these leases are 10 and 20 years, so they have a landlord who's trying trying to plan for what the neighborhood's going to do and speculate about what the value is going to be because they can only increase rent so much. You have a small business that often doesn't get supported and has outrageous loans and has not enough time or not enough to make their business flourish. So there are a lot of factors. We also are now behaving in a completely different way as a consumer. It's not just Amazon. We're also spending more money on vacations and things like that as opposed to just regular goods. And most importantly, look at how much money and what percentage of our income goes to rent. As far as actually running a business and getting customers, you need customers with disposable income. So there's so many factors. We need to make absolutely sure that if we intervene in the retail landlord relationship, that we do not end up artificially propping up prices that may be on their way down. That's typically what happens when you have a large amount of vacancies. What I propose is a tax abatement for any landlord for one single year if they put a tenant in a recently vacant retail space within 1 year's time. Now, they're already deducted in, so they're not paying taxes on that property anyway, so they get 1 year back. So that incentivizes them without artificially propping up market conditions. But we need to make sure, I think Councilmember Rosenthal was talking about the legality of the SBA, Small Business Act, which is something that's been kind of in City Council for about 20 years. It's something that we had in this country until the 40s and something that all of England has basically. We have the right to negotiate. We just need to be careful that these things can't be, exploited and abused by Chase Bank or Best Buy. So we be very careful when we intervene in this marketplace that we're not somehow creating a loophole by which it can be further exploited. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Lambert.
In the last month, my campaign did a survey of empty storefronts on the Upper West Side. Gail Brewer's survey said there were 188 empty storefronts all the way from Manhattan, from the top of Manhattan down to the bottom along Broadway. We have 130 empty storefronts on the Upper West Side. It's unconscionable, and it's a huge impact on our community. Not only are these storefronts empty more than ever, but you all feel it. They're empty longer, and they're making our streets darker, less safe, and dirtier. It's a crisis on the Upper West Side. And the last 4 years, this council member has done nothing about it, not one thing. The commercial rent abatement that she referred to was Dan Grodnick's idea, and it was blessed by REBNY, the Real Estate Board of New York. It's not going to materially change the status of small businesses on the Upper West Side. What they face are soaring rents, and landlords that won't reduce those rents because they're waiting for the next bank or the next drugstore or the next boutique from France to come along with subsidized advertising to cover the rent. I'm a former business owner. I understand the hardships of small business on the Upper West Side. I'm the only one among us that has done that. I established the first working group for small businesses at Community Board 7 and passed the storefront zoning. That's the first step along the way of making this better. I also came up with the idea of charging for vacancies, and that is an important thing, making sure that landlords don't shift too fast. Support renegotiation of the leases when they're at their most vulnerable. Close the tax loopholes. I'll be happy to entertain the Legacy Stores Act. And we need to cut the red tape in the city that prevents small businesses from getting even a start in the Upper West Side. It's so hard to make a business work here, and we have to do everything we can to streamline the way the city regulates small businesses and really support them to have a fighting chance to stay in business in our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lambert. Councilwoman Rosenthal.
Yes.
What is the single most important issue affecting quality of life in District 6?
Oh, sorry.
Affordable housing, affordable housing, and affordable housing. The biggest issue affecting the life of New Yorkers on the Upper West Side. We're losing affordable housing hand over fist. Bill was talking about quantifying how much we lose. In fact, there's a nonprofit that already does that. And my office has actually calculated that number during the time that I've been in office. It's roughly 400 units of affordable housing every year that we've lost on the Upper West Side. It's why I supported MIH and ZQA. We need more affordable housing. It's why I've proposed an office of the tenant advocate to be placed in the Department of Buildings so that tenants can be at the same platform where the landlords are. We have to address affordable housing. It is the single most devastating issue on the Upper West Side. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Mr. Owens.
I tend to agree with Helen. I think I might be the only person on the panel who lives in affordable housing. I grew up in affordable housing, so I understand the importance of it. My family came here on the Upper West Side in 1971, and it was because of affordable housing we were allowed to thrive here. And we stabilized this neighborhood. And that's why we are where we are today. So it's very important to protect what we have and also look for new ways and avenues to bring on more affordable housing. It's always a tough issue. It's always a tough balance. As the neighborhood becomes more and more desirable, the economics of it doesn't really lend itself well to having affordable housing. People want more and more profits when they come in and build things. Landlords want to change their apartments from regulated to non-regulated as fast as they can. So we have to do everything we can to fight that. It's going to be very difficult to build in a finite community of land and space. So we have to go about preserving what we already have and going from there. And I think that's the most important issue that we have to deal with on the Upper West Side, is affordable housing.
Yeah, really is.
The single most important issue we have on the Upper West Side is participation in our democracy.
Yeah.
That is the single biggest issue, because as we talk about money being the biggest issue and getting money out of politics, you can't do that without participation. And if you want to address homelessness, if you want to address zoning reform, if you want to address out of context and out of scale development, if you want to address congestion, if you want to address traffic, if you want to address any of these issues where your vote is being bought and sold at City Hall, you can't even make headway. Everything that you do is going to have some sort of a component to it, some sort of a component. Mandatory inclusionary housing, you know what they initially wanted? They basically wanted to scrap FAR. That's basically the ratio they calculate building height at. They wanted to do that citywide initially, and they only got away with it in those districts where they're building inclusionary housing. It's a big developers giveaway. They may be building some affordable housing. I always wait when I hear affordable housing, that magical word, permanent. If someone tells you they're building 50-year affordable housing, that's not affordable housing. That's affordable housing for 50 years. So we need to get money out of politics, and we can do it locally, and we can do it almost immediately. A whole host of reforms have been proposed for year after year, and then once we get it done locally, we need to do it at the state level. So I'd say the number one issue on the Upper West Side is money in politics, because of its long-reaching, long-impacting impact it has on our day-to-day lives, and the issue that you have most near and dear to your heart, the issue that you have that is most near and dear to your heart, the issue that you have that is most near and dear to your heart, all comes down to where your vote is being bought and sold once you leave the ballot box and once the lobbyists down at City Hall start getting their way. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Owens.
It's easy to say affordable housing is the number one issue on the West Side and speak it like it's the only thing that we can do but then not deal with the root cause of no affordable housing. The root cause of no affordable housing is the unfair policies that favor real estate development and landlords. We have to address the root causes because they affect everything. They affect the empty storefronts that we have on the Upper West Side, up and down every single avenue. We don't have our bodegas and our favorite shoe shop anymore. We have Dwayne Reed. It affects the schools that are overcrowded because luxury development brings people into the schools without giving us any spaces back. It affects the rents that seniors struggle to pay. And we can't let that keep giving away our housing, our affordability, our community, our air to developers under the guise of affordable housing. If we want affordable housing, we've got to preserve what we have and build regular affordable housing and incentivize developers to build it without selling air rights. ZQA and MIH, the citywide upzoning that Helen voted for and our community board voted against, relies on tax breaks to developers.
It doesn't.
Yes, those tax
It
breaks
just
are coming
doesn't.
from the state. The policy is
We
from the
can't.
state. But it is
It's
a
a
tax break.
state issue.
It is a break that gives them a higher building and kickbacks and taxes in order to build affordable housing. And so far, we're not getting it. The 55 units that we're supposed to get from Collegiate that she talked about, that was meant to be for new affordable housing. New affordable housing. Instead, it's going to preserve some Michelamas that are leaving the program. Why not institute new Michelama programs here on the Upper West Side? That would make a difference.
They do not work.
Dr. Goodman.
Well, obviously, I think the biggest issue affecting this neighborhood is the expansion plan proposed, steered, underwritten by climate deniers at the museum, lobbied by the museum, supported by our council person. And one issue about the museum I really didn't get a chance to touch on when we were on that topic, so since this is all me, I'll talk about. You know, the museum wants to build a big entranceway on the Columbus Avenue side, something like the entranceway that exists already on Central Park side. Big difference between the two. The one that would be on the Columbus Avenue side, the proposed entranceway, would be only yards from residential areas. So when Helen's talking about mitigating the noise, mitigating the toxins, mitigating the traffic, it understates what the problem is. If you look at a book that the New York Police Department puts out called Engineering Security, they say that New York is a unique high-risk environment. New York City has 3 types of buildings: low tier, medium tier, and high-risk tier. Museum already is a high-risk tier building, but at least it's set back from the neighborhood. Now, I mean, without getting into horror stories and trying to evoke darkness in your lives, you recall that just months ago, we saw in Europe people taking cars, driving up onto sidewalks at cultural institutions, and posing direct dangers to people who are visitors, tourists, and in the area. It happened at the Eiffel Tower, it happened at the Louvre, it happened in Nice. I want to know this. Has the museum, has the councilwoman considered even putting bollards in front of the museum? I haven't seen it in one plan. I haven't heard it discussed anywhere. And when they first introduced the plan, they didn't even send it to the counterterrorism unit at the New York Police Department. They sent it to the community affairs officer in the 20th precinct.
Thank you, Dr. Goodman. Now for closing remarks. Let me start with Mr. Raudenbush.
I'm sorry?
Closing remarks.
Closing remarks, okay.
For 2 minutes.
I was waiting for it to be a question.
Jeopardy.
This moment, this evening is, it's not about us. It's about you. It's about your neighborhood, your block, your quality of life. When you get off a hard day's work, what's your life like? What's your neighborhood like? When you send your kids to school, can you trust that it's not only a good school, but also we've been fair about the way that we do schools in the city? When you spend your weekends, do you have the kind of neighborhood that's not only the way that you like a neighborhood, but the way that's going to, are we preserving a neighborhood for a future generation? Now, what I'm asking you to do is I'm asking you to get involved in your democracy. You have to participate. You have to hold your elected officials accountable, and that job never ends. That only gets, it seems to get worse day by day. But our actual way of life, our whole entire participatory democracy is under deep threat when we have barely a few people showing up for elections. If we restore actual representative democracy and listen to our constituents and do the patient task of being, and here's a thought, public servants instead of politicians. I have a good neighbor and a good friend who reminded me that he was old enough to remember when politicians were public servants.
Yeah.
I'm a public servant. I don't advocate for the park because I'm trying to grandstand. I advocate for the park because it's the right thing to do. I was on the forefront with all for it of filing a zoning challenge because it's the right thing to do. Because it's right to stand up for our way of life. And it's right to, and I see so many young people here wearing blue and orange shirts. It's so important that we stand up for their future right now, because if we don't stand up for their future, all we're going to be doing is being in the recovery process of some disastrous decisions that we've made. I'm a Gen Xer, so I have the lucky fortune of being able to communicate with both baby boomers and millennials. And let me tell you, you need to vote for who you think is going to be the most honest public servant possible. And you don't even just vote for them, you need to go to work for them. You need to go advocate for them. You need to help them create a citywide coalition to push the kind of agenda that preserves our quality of life, not just for us, but for future generations. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for participating.
I'll come to your side. All right.
I'm going this way.
Well, being a newbie among us here, I just think it's important for you guys to understand that all these issues are very important to all of us. And we're pretty much tilted towards the same solutions, same side, because they affect all of us. All of us in our community as one homogeneous group of people. So it's very important that we understand that all these issues are important to us, and how we attack them is very important. Quality of life issues for the Upper West Side are most important to me. I look at Central Park, where are the bathrooms? I watch people in their cars sitting there wasting hours of their day because of the ridiculousness of alternate street parking rules. Those are the kind of things that mean something to me. Obviously, public school, safety, affordable housing, senior care, land use, all those things are very important. But I'm not going to get caught up in all the minutiae that we've seen here today. I'm here to see change. I'm here to see progress. I'm here to be an advocate for everybody here. And that's everybody in our community. The people in Wise Tower, the people in Trinity, the people all over.
Yeah.
There's a big community. And whether you're on 60th Street or 107th Street, you're Upper West Siders. Period. There's no blocks of people. We're all one group of people, and we have to be representative. And like Bill said, let's get everybody together. Let's communicate. There have to be better systems. Channel. There's like small fractions of people that come together. We need to include everybody. There's a lot of people in the neighborhood who are disenfranchised because nobody goes out and reaches out for them. I grew up with these people. You have to include them in the process and make them accountable to get involved in the process, and then make us accountable to make sure that we do what we say we're going to do when we're going to do it. So thank you everybody for coming, and I appreciate all the support in the future. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Councilwoman Rosenthal.
Thank you so much. I agree with the participation piece. I encourage people to sign up to get my e-blast from my government website, helenrosenthal.com, so everyone can stay informed. There's a case being made tonight that things could be better on the Upper West Side. I agree with that. That's why all of us are here tonight, to talk about what we can do. And I'm really proud to talk about what I plan to do over the next 4 years. I plan to pass the commercial rent tax and vacancy fee legislation. I'll continue to root out waste in city government. David, I can't wait to talk to you about the $3 million bathrooms in city parks. It's unbelievable. We're not done with procurement reform. And we will pass the legislation that I introduced to shine a light on backroom deals and level the playing field for tenants. In politics, you can tell a lot by a candidate, by who they're endorsed by. And for an incumbent, you have to meet a higher standard, because did I deliver on the promises that I made in 2013? I'm proud that every single group that endorsed me in 13 has endorsed me again in 17. Appreciating the work that I've done to raise wages for social service workers, low-income workers. I've been endorsed by DC 37. And calling me brave for standing in support of the 9-to-1 consensus vote to desegregate our schools. I've been endorsed by the teachers union, the principals union, and on. I ask you to join Manhattan Borough President Gail Brewer, who's endorsed me, and vote for me on September 12th. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman.
Thank you. You're so sweet.
Well, I haven't been endorsed by anyone. I don't owe anything to anyone. We have spent a very energetic past 6 months getting ready to run for the September 12th primary. And I just want to say two things that I haven't heard mentioned yet tonight, come across my mind. The reason I'm so upset about this museum expansion project, it really can be boiled down to one word: greed. It's really a very greedy thing to do. The museum has 27 buildings already in the park. It occupies more than half the park. It's a public park, and yet they want more, and they want us to fund it. That's the first thing that sort of struck me as I started to think through the night's discussion. Second word that I never heard mentioned, and I'm sorry I didn't bring it up myself, but it's a part of the second issue that's critical to me, and it has to do with the segregated school system, prejudice. Let that sit for a second. Prejudice. Just like greed for the museum project is preventing us from seeing clearly how we can stop and what we must do to prevent that from happening. The same thing with the segregated school system. Do you know that in the northern part of our district, this is District 3 for the schools, the 10 most northern schools have an average white population of 2%. Flip over to the southern part of the district and go down to 199, 191, the computer school. Guess what? The situation exactly the opposite. There are very, very few African American, very, very few Hispanic students in those schools. So we've got essentially educational apartheid. How can we, as faith-based people, as caring people, as a civil rights legacy community, allow that prejudice to exist? We can stop it. Vote for me on September 12th. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Moore. And finally, Mr. Moore.
Well, I get to wrap up. I want to thank you all for being here tonight. It really does demonstrate your commitment to our community. And by and large, many of you probably have some concerns about our community as well, and I appreciate you coming out today to engage in this conversation. I also want to acknowledge Bill's remarks about the importance of engagement and the fact that we need to really work hard on elections more so than any other type of activism. Elections are what will change policy and take out special interests. I like what Carrie said too about being a community that's going to be welcoming and inclusive. Council member said that the job of the council member is to represent the city and then take care of things in the district. I think it's exactly the opposite. We need to take care of our district, of every person, every member, every school, every child, every senior on the Upper West Side. I would not be running for city council if I didn't have real concerns about the schools continuing to be overcrowded and kids not getting the attention they need. If I didn't see the storefronts that are empty and strewn up and down every single avenue of our community. And if I didn't see seniors really struggling to survive in our community without the support they need. I have a concrete record of producing results in all of these areas. I negotiated the very first new public school in this community in 30 years. 600 units of permanent affordable housing. And also the storefronts zoning that we have on the Upper West Side that keeps our storefronts safe. And we need to do so much more. Those are the kind of concrete results that you can count on me. And I also have plans to bring people together and make sure that we ensure a future with real policies, with technical results, technical solutions. As an engineer, I really know how to do that, and bring people together and make sure that our community is preserved to be the livable, wonderful, accessible community that it has always been. We're losing the character of the Upper West Side. And it's time to have a council member that's going to fight for you and fight for all of us.
Thank you. Carrie Goodman, Councilmember Helen Rosenthal, Mr. David Owens, and Mr. William Rowdenbush. Please give them another round of applause. Please keep in mind that while it is important to be registered to vote, it is even more important to go and vote. So that said, please keep in mind that the primary will be held on September 12th, and the elections will be held on November 7th. There are a lot of questions that didn't get asked tonight. It is your responsibility to get in contact with each and every one of these candidates. Go to their website, go to their emails, heck, they're here. And ask them the question that you need to ask them and demand a response. It is your responsibility to make sure that you have the right council person representing you. Thank you, have a great night.
No, I know you think.